Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1972B, and today's date is September 17th, 2019, and the title of the episode is We Are Closer Than You Think, Messages Received on the Ready. Now, before we get started, let's talk about being prepared. The world is going to change. That fact is all over our headlines and how markets are reacting to them. And when it does, it only takes one major disaster to remind us of how fragile life is. Today's the day to act, and we're in National Preparedness Month. And I prepare with my Patriot Supply. They're the industry leaders for preparedness and sell the emergency food, gear, water filtration products that you will need at some point. Act today and save $100 on a 4-week emergency food when you go to my special website, preparewithx22.com. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, the deep state, they are using whatever they have to stop what's coming, but guess what? They can't stop it. Think about it. The Mueller report failed, racism failed, recession push failed, impeachment, which they're having now with Lewandowski, that was a complete and utter circus. Actually, Lewandowski was brilliant. He played them, and they look like idiots. Think about the Cohen hearing. Think about Mueller. Every time this happens where they're trying to push impeachment, it backfires on them. They don't even realize it. Kavanaugh, that whole thing is falling apart. That was a big fail. The candidates to remove Trump, they're a complete and utter joke. The hit on Saudi Arabia, their oil processing center, didn't work. The war that they were pushing is not working either. It's all falling apart. How do we know this? Trump sent us multiple messages to let us know. We'll be talking about this a little bit later in this report. But first, Representative Omar, she is desperately trying to hide her marriage to her brother. Now, new evidence has emerged that Representative Omar did indeed marry her brother and that her real name may actually be Ilan Nur Saeed. A resurfaced tweet from 2013 in which she refers to her father by name, Nur Saeed. The tweet was later deleted this morning after the news broke, but it was saved before it was deleted. In 2009, Representative Omar married Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi, who was the son of Nur Saeed. This confirms that Ilhan Omar has lied under oath numerous times. It is past time charges are brought against this individual, and the investigation needs to move forward. Because if she has nothing to hide, why in the world would you go ahead and delete it? And this is the tweet. Happy Father's Day to my Abo Nur Saeed. I am forever grateful to Allah for giving me the best father. But she deleted it. Why? Because she knows. Tom Fitton tweeted out the following. Did Ilhan Omar delete more evidence she married her brother? Absolutely. Now, we know the deep state is trying everything and anything. Yes, they're going to be creating fake news stories, hide facts, and make it seem like they are telling the truth, but the public is starting to catch on. And this tactic is not working anymore. Take, for example, Kavanaugh. This entire story completely fell apart, and the New York Times is in the center of it all. It shows they were peddling fake news. Run to the Race let us know that 1 year ago, Q posted the following. Panic in D.C., and this is in September 17, 2018. Panic in D.C. D's offering to kill, and kill is in caps and brackets, sexual assault allegations versus Judge K in exchange for immediate pullback of D class. POTUS, Judge K will be confirmed regardless. Q. And here they are 1 year later, and they're still going after Judge K. And maybe this was the plan. Maybe they're saying, listen, we're going to hit him hard unless you pull back the D class. But that didn't work. It completely fell apart. And what's very interesting is Senator Chuck Grassley, who oversaw the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court hearing, said that a former classmate accusing the justice of sexual misconduct didn't contact the Senate Judiciary Committee last year. That person, Mr. Steyer, didn't reach out or provide information to the committee majority. My office never received anything from him or his unnamed friends. Grassley argued that if his staff had received an allegation like the one detailed by the New York Times over the weekend, it would have been investigated. They never received anything. Trump tweeted out something very interesting after the story broke, and then it turned out to be fake. And just listen to the tweet, because there's something in there which I think is another message. I call for the resignation of everybody at the New York Times involved in the Kavanaugh smear story. And while you're at it, the Russian witch hunt hoax, which is just as phony. They've taken the old gray lady and broken her down, destroyed her virtue, and ruined her reputation. She can never recover and will never return to greatness under current management. The Times is dead. Long live the New York Times. It's funny that he mentions the old gray lady. Who is the old gray lady? Is it the New York Times, or is he talking about RBG? That is very interesting. He continued with his tweet. The New York Times is at its lowest point in its long and storied history. Not only is it losing a lot of money, but it is a journalistic disaster, being laughed at even in the most liberal of enclaves, and has become a very sad joke all over the world. Witch hunt hurt them. That story, Kavanaugh, is nowhere near the standard that should be met in publishing a story. And I remember when Trump was saying that by the time Trump is finished with all his terms, the New York Times will be out of business. And it's starting to look that way. Now, very interestingly, Christine Blasey Ford, her lifelong friend and alleged witness, now doubts her story. Leland Kaiser, who Ford claimed was one of the 5 people at the party in the 80s, where she says Kavanaugh sexually assaulted her, says, I don't have any confidence in the story. Kaiser, who said she was pressured by Ford's ex-FBI buddy to lie and say that she didn't remember the party instead of saying that it never happened, originally said through her attorney that she does not refute Dr. Ford's account. However, the simple and unchangeable truth is that she is unable to corroborate because she has no recollection of the incident in question. I was told behind the scenes that certain things could spread about me if I didn't comply, Kaiser said. Now, Kaiser said she doesn't believe Ford's story at all. Ryan Savendra tweeted out the following. CBS News, Christine Blasey Ford's close friend, who Ford says was at the party when Kavanaugh allegedly assaulted her, said Ford's story isn't believable and told the FBI Ford's allies pressured her, threatened her with a smear campaign to say otherwise. Now think about that for a second. We heard about this before. Remember Post 2359? Remember when Q gave us a link to C-SPAN? This is Nancy Pelosi. She's talking about a wrap-up smear campaign, and it was deployed against Justice K. Well, take a listen to what Pelosi said about a wrap-up smear campaign.
We call it the wrap-up smear. If you want to talk politics, you call it the wrap-up smear. You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press that this, and this. So they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic, and it's self-evident.
And as you can see today, what Pelosi was talking about, it is so easy to see, and they're completely exposed. Then we come to find out that there's a secret organization behind the movement opposing Trump's judicial nominees. An organization that leads the protest movement against Trump's judicial nominees and presents itself as a grassroots is really the project of Arabella Advisors, a largely unknown, massively funded strategy company pushing the interests of wealthy leftist donors. These and other revelations were documented in an extensive expose by a conservative watchdog, Capital Research Center, which traced Arabella's vast network and unmasked a shadowy system of pop-up groups designed to look like grassroots activist organizations developed by, housed in, and staffed by the for-profit, privately held Arabella Advisors. Arabella firm managed 4 nonprofits: the New York Venture Fund, 1630 Fund, Windward Fund, and Hopewell Fund. These nonprofit entities play host to hundreds of groups and projects that promise interests and political movements strategically deployed in a long-term campaign to nudge the country to the left. A central component of Arabella's activists is opposition to Trump's conservative judicial nominees. One Arabella-tied organization calling itself Demand Justice Quickly thrust itself into the center of the opposition to Trump's Supreme Court pick, Brett Kavanaugh. Even before Trump announced Kavanaugh as his nominee, Demand Justice, founded by former members of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential election campaign, committed to spending about $5 million to oppose the eventual pick. Boom. And today, we had Nadler and this circus of an impeachment hearing, which is not an impeachment hearing because there was never a vote. They keep calling it different names. They keep changing the rules. And let me just say, Lewandowski was absolutely brilliant. He played them. I don't have the report. Can you read out of the report? At one point they said, do you keep all these notes in your safe? He says, my safe is pretty big. And he was talking to Swalwell, and I have a lot of guns in there. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He completely played them. And when the American people see this, and they saw it because it was live, the entire House Judiciary, they look like fools. Because there is nothing there. They're just repeating the same thing over and over and over. There is absolutely nothing new. There's no obstruction. Mueller, from the beginning to the end, was able to complete everything. He found there was no Russian collusion. There was no obstruction. The more important question is, how did this all start? But nobody wants to ask that question because they know how it did start. And guess what? The American people are going to hear how this started very, very soon. This is why Jim Jordan is out there continually asking, don't we want to know how this started? That's why Representative Collins is saying, don't we want to know how this started? Who is behind all of this? Because everything that you talked about turned out to be fake, phony, and false. Remember, they were expecting this incredible Mueller report that was going to bury Trump. They got nothing. And this is all they have left. It's a show. They're trying to keep this out in public. Why? Think about it. Why? Because what's coming? The D class. They're going to say that Trump is releasing this information because we're trying to impeach him. It's a political hit. Why do you think they keep this going? Why do you think they have the Epstein information, the data, the recordings, the documentation, just waiting in the wings? Because they're going to present it all. They're going to bury the House Judiciary Committee and the rest, saying that this is a political hit. It's going to be a complete and utter disaster for them. Remember, timing is everything. Now, very interestingly, yesterday we mentioned Snowden. He's stuck in Russia. We know why. They never thought she was going to lose. And now he's asking Macron if he would help him, if he would give him political asylum from the United States. He doesn't know what to do. He's stuck in Russia, and he has nothing else to give them. Remember, Brennan was supposed to bring him home. They were going to bring him home and have a parade. Guess what? There is no parade for him. And the United States right now, they're filing a civil lawsuit against Snowden for publishing a book in violation of CIA and NSA non-disclosure agreements. This is a civil suit. What do they want? They want all the proceeds from his book. Remember, he was put into place to damage the NSA. So the CIA would be the only intelligence organizations. That's what this was all about. This is why Brennan shipped him off to Russia. We bring you back once she wins. Don't worry about it. You're safe. Now he's screwed. It didn't work out. Now we know that the Dems, the deep state, their entire push is to take the weapons away from the American people. You can pretend that this is not what it is. That's exactly what it is. They wanted universal background checks, which means they need to have a database, which means they need to track every single weapon. This is exactly what the UN Arms Treaty was, which John Kerry introduced into the Senate. They wanted the Senate to pass it. Obama was going to sign off on it. It didn't happen. So now they needed many events to try to push their legislation. Well, Trump just shot them down. He is not going to support H.R. 8, their universal background check bill. Boom, out the window. And I don't believe these red flag laws, those are not going anywhere. Yes, there might be certain states that are passing them because they're under a certain mandate. They're taking orders from certain individuals, deep state operatives. But guess what? This is all going to be turned around. Wait and see. Now, what's very interesting, when we talk about Saudi Arabia, the report came out, and of course, this is from sources, U.S. officials, of course, they never name anyone, that reported they figured out what happened in Saudi Arabia. That it was drones and low-flying cruise missiles that hit the Saudi production plants. Think about this for a second. You don't think there's satellites that are pointing at this entire location 24 hours a day that would catch a cruise missile, low-flying cruise missile, heading towards Saudi Arabia? And you don't think Saudi Arabia would have been alerted to this? And don't you think if it was a cruise missile, the damage would be incredible? But the damage wasn't that bad. Actually, the production plant is reinforced to withstand missile hits. And if you notice, they're almost back to full production already. Think about this for a second. Now, either Saudi Arabia did this to themselves to try to increase the price of oil, or there are other individuals that were trying to push a war somehow, some way. Because remember the mandate when the petrodollar system was born. The Middle Eastern countries would pump the oil. The U.S. would protect them from enemies as long as they sold the oil using the dollar. Now, do you really think Trump is going to uphold that deal? It's a central banker deep state deal. Do you think he's going to come to the aid of Saudi Arabia and attack Iran? No, absolutely not. Actually, he's doing away with the central bank. He's doing away with the petrodollar system. So why in the world would Trump go ahead and protect Saudi Arabia and enter the U.S. into war? He would never do this. This was done by rogue factions that were trying to get us into war somehow, some way, or destroy the economic system. But it didn't work. Now the mainstream media deep state, they want him to respond. But Trump, he's not going to respond in the way they want. Just like he hasn't responded with North Korea, Syria, even the shootings. Remember, they're on a certain agenda. Trump is on a different agenda. And King Solomon says Saudi Arabia they're capable of dealing with consequences of attacks on its installations. They don't need any help from anyone else. And you know what? They should deal with it. Now, what's very interesting is that the Iran supreme leader said that there will be no talks with the U.S. at any level unless we go back to the nuclear deal. Then we would consider negotiations. Trump says, well, he'd prefer not to meet with Iran's leader at the UN meeting. But I never rule out anything. But I prefer not meeting with him. Didn't we see something like this with North Korea right before a peace deal? Didn't we see Trump and Kim Jong-un going at it, saying that, listen, unless sanctions are dropped, we're not meeting, there's going to be no peace deal? And then all of a sudden, it was announced that there was a peace deal? I believe that there is already a deal in the back room. They're just playing this out. This is part of the show. Now, right after the attack on Saudi Arabia, Trump tweeted out the following, which is very interesting, which I do believe there's another message in this tweet. Saudi Arabia oil supply was attacked. There is a reason to believe that we know the culprit. Now, do you really think that's Iran? Think about that for a second. Are locked and loaded depending on verification, but are waiting to hear from the kingdom as to who they believe was the cause of this attack and under what terms we would proceed. Think of the words he used here, locked and loaded, and they believe they know who the culprit is. That's very interesting. Now, the mainstream media, they went off of this tweet and said, okay, we're going to war. He's locked and loaded. We're going to be going in. Iran is the target. But I don't think that's what he meant. Let's go back to post 2504. And in this post, I'm not going to read the whole thing, just a certain part of it. Think Senate lock. Think Supreme Court lock. Locked and who is loaded? So there it is, locked and loaded. But who's loaded? Well, didn't Barr just receive the IG Pfizer report? Aren't they reviewing it right now? Is Barr locked and loaded? And are we going to be going after who we believe is the culprit to all of this, which would be the deep state players? It seems that's where we're headed. Now, Trump tweeted out something else that's very interesting, which there's also a message to all Anons, to everyone that wants to pay attention. He said, in a short while, I'll be presenting the New York Yankees, Mariano Rivera, the greatest relief pitcher, and this is in brackets, closer with an exclamation point, of all time, with the Presidential Medal of Freedom in the East Room of the White House. Now, he put the word closer with an exclamation point there on purpose. Let's go back to post 3557. In this, Q gives us, and this is July 30th, 2019, Q gives us a Twitter link to Devin Nunes, and it says hunting for chupacabras. Shows Devin Nunes back in 2001 in hunting gear. And it says targets may be closer than they appear. Hunters become the hunted. Now, if we go to post 2344, this is October 4th, 2018, it says, are you ready to see arrests? Are you ready to see pain? Are you ready to be part of history? I do believe that Trump is saying, we are ready, we are locked and loaded. Everything is closer to coming out than you think. Now remember, Trump is going to be drip feeding this information, not himself, but all those people that are working with him. They're going to be dripping this stuff out to make the deep state feel the pain. And people are saying, well, how do you know we're closer than we think we are? Well, when you hear deep state players start to talk about certain things like deep fakes, you know you're getting really close. Now, in the beginning, we had the low-level people talking about deep fakes. Remember Adam Schiff and the rest? They talk about it quite often. But now we're hearing it from Hillary Clinton. Why is she worried about deep fakes? M2 Madness tweeted out the following. Just Hillary Clinton talking about the need for the mainstream media, etc., to be able to quickly to discredit what is being presented, such as Pizzagate and deep fakes. Listen to what Clinton says about deep fakes.
Number 3, phony, false online news stories often migrate to the so-called mainstream media. And with the increase in sophisticated technology, that will become even easier and more pervasive. What a candidate says in one speech can and will be spliced together with something the candidate said in another speech and put out in a way that means something entirely different than what was intended or actually said. These are the so-called deep fakes.
To me, this is panic. When they start mentioning this, they are now panicking. And it has moved up from the low-level individuals up to the Clinton area, which means they understand that it is coming, and we are closer than everyone thinks. It's about to hit. Patriots are on the ready. We're ready for what is coming. And you can see that there is panic throughout the deep state. They're continually keeping that impeachment thing going, which is nothing really. They're going to use that to try to block what Trump is doing, but that is going to completely fail. Remember, timing is everything. All these different pieces that were put into place and they were just holding steady, there's a reason for that. They needed all of this to come together, and I call it the perfect storm. I know Q has been saying that a storm is coming, but I think the perfect storm is coming, and they needed to keep everything at bay until they had all the pieces, because they needed to drop things at the precise moment. These are the carpet bombs. Then they drop the Moab. The carpet bombs are going to inflict pain on the deep state. And as we get closer and more carpet bombs are dropped, they're going to release the Moab, the mother of all bombs. That's when they're going to feel the most pain. That's when they'll be cornered and there's no way out of it. The mainstream media, they won't even be able to explain it. No one will. Because the amount of documentation, facts, photos, videos, it will be too overwhelming. And remember, they keep talking about deep fakes, but these original recordings that are on tape, they're not digital. They're original recordings. And believe me, the forensic teams have already gone over them. They've already said that these are real originals. They have them. Get ready, because it's coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.